Hi, welcome to Creativity Hustlers, Fakers and Thieves, our creative conversation this week on curiosity. We had an episode with Deb Stoner drop a week or so ago and had a fascinating conversation with her about her work and its many facets. She's an astonishing artist. But this is an opportunity for Ali, my apprentice and owner of a PhD. I carry his coattails into the room, and some invited guests to talk about this topic. So I'm going to start off with a little story. It's about this idea of curiosity. I wonder, the phrase, which is a lovely thought. In my computer, I translated it into what if. So when I hit F8, that phrase gets written. I hit F8, it says, what if? And this kind of question is intriguing to me because it opens up so many doors for me. And when doors are open, discoveries can occur. So I've told this story before, but I want to tell it again. It was the late 90s, and I'm in San Francisco, dating a woman there, and she was busy working. I was walking up on the crest of Pacific Heights, and it was the fabulous hillside covered with mansions and the occasional restaurant, these odd things that San Francisco does, and apartment buildings. If you have a house up on top of this hill, you have a view of the Golden Gate Bridge and maybe the old Presidio. Lovely part of town, nice location. So I'm walking there one sunny afternoon with my sketchbook, and I'm sketching architectural details, interesting things I see, porches or fabulous fenestrations. Look that up. It means windows. Do not get yourself defenestrated. And I did find some things that caught my eye. In fact, I was sketching one neoclassical facade, this white old two-story building. And this man approached me, and I saw him talking to a gardener or someone over at the side of the yard. I'm just standing on the sidewalk there, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hello, may I ask what you are doing?" And I say, "Well, I'm sketching. I'm a furniture maker, and I'm looking for things that spark ideas." And said, "Oh, you like furniture, do you?" I go, "Yeah, I do." He said, "Well, I have some furniture I could show you inside." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'll skip over the part where he revealed that his wife was sick and in the hospital. And I'm thinking, oh, geez, that's too bad. And he talked a little bit about his job as chief of staff at some little college named Stanford. So the guy was doing all right. And I was very grateful. He let me into his house and he showed me some desk in the front room, some front office. It was terrible. It was a hinge that was falling off. And then he showed me some art, and it was like, oh, okay, it's all right. But I was, polite. I kept nodding my head in gratitude. And finally, we get to the back room, which is the dining room. And the dining room has mahogany. I think it was mahogany, very dark mahogany set of dining room furniture and chairs, table and chairs, sideboard, whatnots, and packed into this very small room. And in the back, there's a small door. And this, I'm looking at the furniture. There's really not much to recommend it. And then he said, "Would you like to see my library?" And I said, "Okay." It's got to be, not out loud, I said to myself, it's got to be better than what I'm looking at here because there's not a lot going on here. And he opens this door, this small door, and he steps down onto this landing. And I go through the doorway, this very small doorway. And on the back of his house, he has transported a library from France and put it on the back of the house. And so there are these arched windows looking out at the Golden Gate Bridge, all this oak paneling with these giant dovetail keys holding the panels together, oak floor, and this remarkable stairway down to it. It was astonishing. It was he was testing me, with each room, he'd show me a little bit more. He never mentioned that he had a library in the back of his house. And I was flabbergasted. And I took a picture with my little camera. I'm trying to think what I did with those photos, but all I was doing, I was out sketching. What if I hadn't been on that walk? What if this guy hadn't seen me? What if? All these what ifs. But all these things happened. And it was one of the lucky moments of my life, and showed me what can happen when you get curious about things. You don't know what you will find under that rock or behind that door or with your next pencil sketch. And you won't know until you try. And I think it was a remarkable event for me. It was just a little door opened into this grand world. So I have enjoyed this sense of curiosity. Ali, do you have some thoughts of your own on this topic?
Well, as we discussed in the talk, the notion of curiosity is rife with potency, and that can be good and it can be bad, and sometimes, too much curiosity ends up leaving somebody flailing about, not really achieving any sort of mastery or competency, even in some cases, because they're dabblers, and then there's, of course, the person that gets curious about a thing, and their curiosity can be harnessed to really sink deep into that one thing and find all the different facets of it. And I think that's a unique capacity and a challenge. Of course, I fall into, somewhere in between these two things. I surround myself with interesting things, interesting people, and I'm always curious about doing more and more and more. The Oscar Wilde phrase, eat the fruits from all the trees and all the gardens and all the world. I learned that in my late teens, and I've spent the last nearly 30 years, really sinking deep as far into that mentality as I can. And as such, unlike you or Jeff Stoner or pretty much almost anybody that comes on these conversations, I've never achieved mastery. As I said last time, like, I'm not interested in it. I'm just really a master of being curious. That's really my thing. And I'm excited by people who are much better at individual things than I am. So this notion of curiosity, surrounds us. We live in a curious world that oftentimes, I think the biggest challenge of curiosity is bridling it. That does seem like, to me, what is the most difficult element in it is how you can harness it and bridle it and ride it and really make something come of it that is extraordinary. That is extraordinary. The experience of it itself can be extraordinary, but it can also be incredibly depressing. That's the thing we don't talk about curiosity. That thing we haven't talked at all. It's incredibly depressing too, because you become so aware of how many things there are that you'll never understand, never get good at, never even try. Right. So, like, listening to Deb Stoner, I'm never, I have a good friend of mine that you've met who's a jeweler up in Portland, and I look at his work and I'm like, man, that looks so fun. And it's like turning and cutting and carving and all these things. I'm like, God, I would love to experiment with that, especially because it's so small too, right? Like, there's no going home at the end of the day. Oh, my shoulders hurt from milling, 400 feet of, 8-quarter, 12-quarter, walnut or whatever it is, and you just go home and you're clean. You wash your hands, take off your little apron, and then you're done. It's so nice. I'm so jealous of that, And but I'll never do it. I'm never going to get into lapidary work. I have too many other things, surrounded by things in this little office of mine that are occupying my curiosity. So it's really depressing too, this notion of curiosity about how little of the world you know. And this is just the things that you happen to come across if you're lucky, and then how much more there is. And then, like, for example, I climb rocks. I'm a rock climber. I climb rocks. I'm not a rock climber. And I could say this because as a rock climber, I know what rock climbers look like. Great rock climbers. Right? So if you were to come see me rock climb, an average Joe who doesn't know the rock climbers, you come see me, well, that guy's pretty good. Wow, that guy's doing some crazy stuff. He's insane. Wow, he doesn't care about his life at all. Oh, he's doing all sorts of radical stuff. Not at all. Not whatsoever. I'm totally safe. I don't do anything radical. I'm not even very good because I know as a rock climber where I am and where okay, like pretty good starts. And then there's this whole other realm that like, I don't know what you're doing there. You're like you're doing things I don't even understand. And then I can get very sad. I can get very sad, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you start watching these videos on YouTube, these people cutting dovetails, for example, and it's like, man, I mean, hundreds of dovetails I've hand cut. I'm still terrible at it. I'm still not even very good. Not, no, not very good, And so it's depressing. It's depressing. Like when I watch videos of you, like teaching us how to do dovetails in your mastery class. And I'm just like, God, it makes it look so annoyingly easy. These 5-minute dovetails that he do still take me 50 minutes. Like your 5-minute dovetail lesson still takes me like, a good half hour to really make a decent tight fit. Forget about the thousandths of an inch, tolerance. Forget about that. I'm talking like, I'm barely seeing, maybe some light will come through, I can brush my teeth by that light, and so curiosity, as I often tend to be in our conversations, I again, I see the good and also a lot of the struggle.
Fair
But
enough.
the struggle is what makes it worth it, right? So like for me, as a person, luckily, like my curiosity is balanced by an incredible eagerness to engage in struggle. I love difficult things. I love being challenged. I love failing. I'm really good at it. I love it. I'm excited by struggle and trying. I don't want to get great at things. I like struggling, trying again, and then trying something different. So so having said all that,
Yeah.
let's just go with it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'll respond to that in a bit, but first I want to introduce Eric Rimmel, a professor of applied engineering, which means he knows technology like I never will and never want to. And in the field, can I say that you're a woodworker? I know you are a woodworker, but your applied engineering is in the field of woodworking.
It's one of the fields.
Oh, it's just one of the fields. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Tell us more
Thank
about your world.
I'm gonna pick up where Ali left off.
Okay.
I am, in terms of knowledge, I am extremely wide and shallow.
Uh-huh.
I have some deep waterways are hidden within there, but for the most part, I'm wide and shallow. I teach CAD and CAM and CNC and design and woodworking and fluid power and all sorts of stuff. I've taught computer networking and PC repair and operating systems. And when I went to college, I was very curious and I didn't take classes that I already knew about. So like I didn't take the woodworking class, I taught the woodworking class. And so I took classes that I didn't know anything about to be challenged and to be curious about and to find a rabbit hole. So yeah, my world right now is mostly CAD, CAM, CNC, woods and design. So yeah.
Well, you said you had that streak of curiosity. Is that still in your world, and does that drive you? Or
very much so. And that's one of the reasons why I got into your program and had tried to get into your program for several years prior to that, actually. I was trying to find a way to do a sabbatical and end up in Portland for a couple of years, but I can't take a 2-year sabbatical. It wasn't going to work.
Right.
So a positive thing of COVID that happened to me is that your program was accessible online, which was great for me.
Right.
But what I found is that in my rush to focus on woodworking, I found out that there's a very long hallway of millions of doors of different types of woodworking.
Oh yeah.
Am I going to do marquetry? We just talked about, post and rung chairs, Windsor chairs, veneer. It's all in that, just behind that little door that I walked through to try and get a deeper knowledge of woodworking. And so I'm in my little space right here, very happily, but also a little angry and a little sad that there's so many things that I want to do that I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to get to it. I've got a scroll saw hanging up a light. That's what I use it for. It's my lamp stand because I just haven't had time to even turn it on. So yeah, curiosity's big. Library with me, 4 years old, first library card.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's 1971.
Mm-hmm.
Now that was it. Everything you needed to know was in that building. You just had to read it. So now it's everything. It's everywhere. It's YouTube, it's Instagram, it's Facebook, it's magazines. And
well, if I may point out
Sure.
that the information and the various rabbit holes one can go into on the internet sometimes dive deep, but oftentimes they're just, let's just waste a little time listening to this. I did it yesterday, listening to this woman talk about quantum mechanics. I don't know jack about quantum mechanics, and I still don't know jack about it, but it was fascinating for a little bit. Do we go deep? I don't think we go deep. I think it's that kind of, I'll dabble in this, I'll try this, and then I'll taste this, and But that's different than the kind of curiosity that Deb Stoner has, and that's for sure. She's interested in exploring an idea and mining that idea. Well, she was a geology major, so I suppose that's apropos. And I think that's one of the things about that interview that was so interesting. But continue on, Eric. Do you have more to add there?
That idea of being, I'm very happy being a very broad depth of knowledge. I can talk a lot about very many things, but then I have to reach a point and go, I've now told you everything. This is as far as I can go. I can't. I might be able to help you solve a problem if you and I brainstorm about it, but I'm not going to be able to say, well, if A, then B, then C. I can help, but I'm not going to be the end all expert in it. It's why I never got a PhD. Is there is nothing in this world that I am that interested in that I want to spend that much time of my life focused on. I have the attention span of a moth. I'm all over the place. So
okay, then let me offer this to you too. Let me offer this idea. This is what Deb said in my interview with her. It was because I had really started to investigate one topic, and that was eyewear. So she started as a metalsmith and got interested in eyewear. Instead of thinking I could make anything in the world got focused. I got focused on what I wanted to investigate, and I got interested in it. And the more interested in it, the more broad I found that world, the more it opened up. And I think that narrowing that focus really helps. And clearly, you have to be disciplined about it, and you have to say, all right, you commit to it. But it opens up worlds, and it's not the opposite. And if there's any fear of being one-dimensional, I think you should let that go, because over time, not right away, it makes you rich in understanding that room that you've entered, whether it's woodworking or jewelry making or photography, as Deb did. And from that comes an understanding over time again of these topics that we're talking about, like curiosity and practice and the value of discipline and failure. You're good at it. Maybe you're not great at it. You have to go deep into these areas in order to gain that understanding. And dipping a toe in and then back out, doing the hokey pokey with lots of different ideas can be self-defeating or depressing, as Ali pointed out. Now, I know I tried different avenues when I got out of college, and I said, okay, I am not going back to school. I am not getting all those other degrees. And I'm not going to be a mechanic like my friends, Joel and Wheaton. And what about craft? I could try craft. I don't know jack about craft. But, it was challenging. It was exhilarating. And it made me use my body and brain in a way I'd never done before. And this was probably my first experience of the flow state, where I said, oh, every day I go into the shop here, I'm getting challenged and I have to learn stuff. And I was teaching myself. So I was a bad student, good teacher, or vice versa. But this accident of choice was exhilarating. And I would walk into my first shop was a garage, and I would walk in going, can you even imagine doing this a year ago? And I couldn't. It was just so exciting to have walked into that room and gone, oh, well, even at that point, I didn't know how big that room was. But you have to commit to going deep. And that hokey pokey thing just ain't going to work. Commitment is the issue. And it was a life choice and then a career, and so if you don't need to do that, you got your money coming in somewhere else, it makes it harder. I mean, I know someone she's well off and has trouble committing to the study of one thing or another. It's hard. It's harder. You don't have to do it. But I think that there's another level that you can get to by that commitment and narrowing your focus to become, as you and I were discussing earlier off camera, become an opera singer or a comedian or a woodworker like me. Anyway.
Yeah. I've kind of 25 years ago, I guess it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I was helping teach a chair design class at the University of Idaho in the College of Art and Architecture. It was 23 years ago. And I've come back around to chairs.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, I'm tired of sticks. I'm tired of boards. And it's just a completely different way of thinking. I'm still working with wood, but it's not dry and it's not straight. And it's just, I find it very, when you talk about a Zen state, sitting at a shave horse to me with a draw knife and a spoke shave to me is just, it's like music. It's you're sitting there and it's either working or if it's not, you flip the stick around,
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at personally right now. Professionally, I still sit in front of a computer, but when I'm home, it doesn't turn on.
Yeah. Well, I think that the exploration has to be deep and can get you to that point where the conversations that you can have about these topics that we're discussing on creativity have a different sense to them. And there's no other way to it but that commitment to a full investigation, not coming back out, right? There is no other option. There's this. Clearly, when you're young, you have to try these things and say, this is not for me. I'm not going to bust my knuckles with working on cars. Nope, not for me. So you do have to try some things, but the commitment, I think, can take you to a different level. I will repeat myself to Ali. I think this idea of 10,000 hours is hooey. It's just the first step. It's important. Don't get me wrong. The 10,000 hours are important to invest in what you're doing, but it's only the beginning. And the timeline of discovering something, being an apprentice, and then a journeyman, and then a master takes time. It just I got a couple of weekends, I just watched those YouTube videos. I should be, look how fast they do it on YouTube. I should be able to do that too, right? And that interview with Pat Metheny, Ali, talking about he's teaching these guys how to play quarter notes. And every guy in that room is going, what the fuck? I know how to play the guitar. I'm playing quarter notes. Because Metheny's going, no, you got to know how to do this so well that it's just a part of you. So as you can go off and do the other stuff even better. And it's a very classical approach to education, but I think it makes sense. What do you think? Yes, sir.
I was going to want to comment also on this concept of 10,000 hours, that we both think in agreement. I think it's absurd to the suggestion that it's going to make any sort of a master or even a novice out of somebody in a field. Is that what also matters is how condensed those 10,000 hours are over your lifespan. So I know that I go on vacation for a month or something, and I come back to my shop, and I now actually have pretty well written out list of protocols, because the only time I've ever hurt myself and was I got bit by a joiner. Just got very lucky, and it was after a long break away, and certain sort of just these things that I thought would be innately sort of drummed into my mind, they slip, and as a friend of mine, he put it into a really interesting phrasing. He called it perishable skills. I'd never heard that before, but I really like it. I really like that concept of perishable skills. And this just actually happened to both of us a couple months ago. We went rock climbing in Joshua Tree, and we're both, Joshua Tree was like our backyard through grad school. We were there every weekend for 6-7 years, and both of us have been off the rock for a while. Definitely. We had a couple of kids, I had some surgeries, and we went back, and routes that we climbed literally in the dark without looking, we were terrified. Just looking at them, not even climbing. Just wow, I climbed that, huh? Like really? And he soloed some of these things. So only some of these things he did without even a rope, and maybe kind of drunk. I'm not gonna speak for him, but definitely very drunk, and this is not an endorsement of that kind of behavior, but it's just, it's stupid things you do when you're younger and you're feeling really strong and powerful. But these perishable skills, so I think that's something that's really critical in that mindset of what, when you're trying to achieve any sort of mastery, and that curiosity, it can make those 10,000 hours happen, but over 10 years, as opposed to 2 or 3 or 1, even more ideally, right? And so if it takes you 10 years to amass 10,000 hours, you're not even going to be a novice by the end of that. You're still going to know nothing. You're going to just start over every week. It's like, when I first started turning on a lathe, I didn't have a lathe, and I was taking these lessons from this guy every couple of weeks, and I'd go there, and every single week, all we were doing is the same damn thing, because I'd grab a chisel and I'd grab a gouge, and I'm like, and everything just go to smithereens, and things are flying. There's, gouges, and everything's really, really bad. And then, I got a lathe and I used it, for like 15 minutes a day, 4 or 5 days a week, and like I was 1,000-fold better after, a month, and so I think that that's something that, I mean, Eric, is it? You're talking about, getting a PhD. I think the best thing about a PhD, when I got mine, I was really into school. I got a bunch of master's degrees, and it's like what I found was interesting about the process. And I got into humanities, so it's like the dilettante PhD, right? So it's like you don't even really focus on anything, just the language. And I was in comparative literature, so it's even worse. Like it's any language, and it could be anything. It's the ultimate dilettante degree to get. If you're ever wondering, that's it. That is it. And what I thought was great about that experience, though, and a very famous African writer, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who was one of my advisors at the time, said this to me. He said, enjoy this time because you'll never again have the freedom to do nothing but play with ideas for the next 5 to 7 years of your life. Nothing else. You're being paid to be here. And I was at a University of California school. So it's this bucolic setting near the ocean. Everything's beautiful. Everybody's just like, in shorts and skirts, and everything was lovely most of the year. And all you had to do was focus. And that is really hard. And it was really hard in the world to achieve that kind of opportunity, So I don't recommend people getting a PhD. I'm vociferous about it when I'm asked, my insights on that. It's vocational training, and the jobs aren't even there anymore. So why even bother? Unless you love it, unless you truly love it, and for no other reason than you're getting that PhD just because you have a PhD, full stop. And it's not even a PhD, it's just being able to focus on something for 6, 7 years. And the PhD just comes along at the end of it. You know what I mean? And that's it. But if you're doing it because you think you're going to get a university teaching whatever it is you've been studying for the last decade, forget about it, man. That is some wishful thinking. But being able to just sit around and read all the works of whoever, Shakespeare or Darwin or Webster, a lot, that there's inherent value in that. So
Yeah. Well, certain doors can open. It's not a bad thing to have, PhD behind your name, but
No.
I mean, you also make a commitment and sacrifice, which is the same thing that any artist needs to do. But I maintain that it's a long-term commitment. It is not spread out over 10 years, as you pointed out. It can't be. And doesn't mean you're not going to struggle. Still struggle to stay alive, struggle to, maintain a business. But there is, all right, I'll give you this quote, which I got from a Sam Shepard book I'm reading, who's quoting Nabokov saying, someone asked him, why does he write? He said, aesthetic bliss. Aesthetic bliss. Okay, well, there you go. When you think about Nabokov's books, you say, quite an offhand remark to this complexity of his chess-like mind. So there is a compensation, but it's not monetary, and sometimes it's barely satisfactory. But there is a compensation, and it doesn't come quick. So, and curiosity is the way in. There you go. There's my quick wrap up. Curiosity is that door you got to open up. And I know for all the new woodworkers who've come into my mastery program or just came and took class from me, I say, it seems like a really small door that you're walking through, but you enter this room and you go, oh, it's a lot bigger in here than I thought. That's the fun part. That really is the fun part. Thanks everyone for coming. I appreciate it. Ali, of course, thank you very much for your efforts. Eric, thank you for joining me today. And this has been Creativity, Hustlers, Fakers, and Thieves. Ali, which one are you?
I'm all of them.
Me too.
Like I said, I don't like to pick, so I'm D.
I'll take
you
them
know.
all. I'll take them
Yeah.
all with me. Let's go. All right.
Depends on the time of the day.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.